Welcome everybody to the Surge Capacity Focus Area session. Today's title is Strategies for Surge Capacity Across Various Hospital Units. As a reminder, the Pediatric Pandemic Network is supported in part by the Health Resources and Services Administration of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The content presented today is that of the authors and does not necessarily represent the official views of, nor an endorsement by, HRSA, HHS, or the U.S. government. As a reminder, we are offering CEs to nurses and physicians to claim the continuing education credits. At the bottom of the screen here, you can see that you must attend the entire live session. You need to ensure to complete the session evaluation and ensure your name is on the session registration. So if you use somebody else's registration, just go ahead and the little ellipsis next to your name, you can click on that and click rename and just make sure your name is on there so that you receive credit and we know that you were here. And then at the very end of the session today, we will give you a slide that has instructions on how to go into the portal and claim those CEs. The session is being recorded. We will have it up on the website early next week. So if you miss it or if you have a colleague that's missing it, just know that the session will be recorded and posted. Any questions you have, feel free to throw those in the chat. We want to make this very interactive, so we will have time at the end for questions and then also our breakout sessions. We talked about CMEs and CEs available, and I just wanted to reiterate that your current tasks for DRC right now, we're just looking for our drills. So sometime between now and the end of the year, you want to be planning your drill, something to do around the surge capacity, using those process measures, and then also know that we are going to have drill materials and a toolkit for you, and we'll talk about that later as well. Your objectives today: want to understand the importance of incorporating all hospital departments and units into your surge disaster plans. So not just the ER. We want to make sure that you walk away with strategies for addressing surge in various areas of your hospital, including radiology and operating units. And finally, to be able to apply the surgery and perioperative unit disaster framework or SPUD framework for your hospital and or healthcare system. Our agenda today, we're going to hear from Shelley Brackman and Colin Clark about the SPUD toolkit. We're going to hear from Erica Popovsky about surge and radiology and incorporating those areas into your surge planning. And then wonderful breakout sessions, and then some upcoming things offered by PPN and DRC. So I'm going to share a poll. I'm going to share it through Zoom because Poll Everywhere, once again, is not working. So I am launching this poll. There we go. And Amina, I will hand it over to you to go through that.
Yes, so I'll just read out loud for those of you can't see it on your screen well. How confident are you that your surgical and peri-op areas are prepared for significant pediatric surge from a traumatic event? And the answers are 1, non-confident, 2, 3, fair, 4, and 5, very confident. And on our polls, it looks like we've got very mixed. So most people are about 50-50 on their coordination with the peri-op areas, and a little bit above and a little bit below. So I think that Having this group on is a great way to start. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. And then we're going to go ahead and next slide. I'm going to introduce Colin Clark, who is Pediatric Emergency Medicine at Nationwide, and Shelley Brackman, who has been doing disaster stuff for a long time in the military and is a nurse also working at Nationwide, but who are going to discuss their SPUD system of peri-op management. I'll hand it over to you, Colin and Shelley. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Excellent. So yeah, like Amina mentioned, my name's Colin Clark. I'm a pediatric emergency medicine at Nationwide Children's Hospital, and Shelley and I work with Region 5 for Kids, Pediatric Disaster Center of Excellence in our trauma work group, which we wanted to share one of the products that we've been working on for a long time and has finally come to fruition, and talk a little bit about how it came to be and what our goals are with the project. So next slide, please. Excellent. So we also have our disclaimer, since we are ASPR and not HRSA funded, but it's essentially the same idea. These are our views and perspectives. They don't necessarily represent the federal government. Moving on, next slide. So the big reason why we did this is there has been a significant increase in mass casualty incidents affecting children in the past decade. The sources listed here show there's not only been increasing incidents, but also increasing morbidity and mortality among children affected by mass casualty incidents, or MCIs. The American College of Surgeons has included new recommendations on putting trauma programs in the room for hospital disaster planning. Several expert recommendations have focused on the importance of an MCI plan for pediatric hospitals in particular. Now, the reason we really brought this up from an operational standpoint is, the OR can often be a bottleneck for critically ill patients during an MCI. And this is not a fault of the operating room. This isn't anything against our surgical colleagues. By their nature, an operation requires much more space and specialized human power. Thus, the OR does not have the flexible capacity of the emergency department or inpatient units. So a dedicated MCI plan can help improve the efficiency and mobilization of the surgical services and operating room. Next slide, please. So we started with holding focus groups with pediatric level 1 trauma centers in the FEMA 5 region. We were able to reach and have focus groups with 9 of the 10 pediatric level 1 trauma centers. The focus groups were conducted over video conferencing. Each hospital had its own focus group that comprised about 3 to 6 staff members from various departments. Every focus group had the trauma program coordinator and or the chief of trauma. Other participants tended to include representatives from emergency medicine, operating room, and emergency management. After we completed those focus groups, we did a qualitative analysis and reviewed the focus group transcripts to identify recurring themes and concepts across all the groups. And then the resulting data from that was used to formulate a surgical MCI response plan framework for use to develop or improve surgical MCI plans. Next slide, please. So a broad overview of the data, we wanted to talk about some of the ubiquitous themes that came up. So the big thing was each trauma center had a vigorous iterative process for plan development, implementation, and improvement. And then we found there were 5 elements that were crucial to the successful implementation of the plan and were commonly cited in each focus group. So I'll go through each of those now. The first was departmental collaboration, specifically between hospital departments. So this includes, medical specialties such as anesthesia, surgical subspecialties, emergency medicine, hospitalist, radiology. But then it also included sort of non-clinical ancillary services such as, pharmacy, like not the clinical pharmacist, but like the actual pharmacy in the hospital. technicians, and then respiratory therapy. Again, not the clinical aspect of respiratory therapy, but more of the equipment, overall operational respiratory therapy. Of special note, every group mentioned that one of the most important collaborators was a non-medical stakeholder, which was security. And you can imagine all the responsibilities that security would have to take on as part of a mass casualty incident response, especially when safety, still needs to be paramount for staff and patients. So the next big element we identified was staff coordination and communication. Reports from real-world mass casualty incidents mentioned one of the major issues was not a lack of staff, but actually too much staff and not enough to do. So incorporating considerations for staff coordination early in the plan can prevent this problem and address the issue of relief of initial responders. You can imagine that the hospital, even if it's a mass casualty incident that is relatively small, so say like 5 to 6 patients, but a page goes out that there's a mass casualty incident, there'll be a lot of people coming into the hospital who want to help. And, that's great. But unfortunately, if everyone dogpiles in the ER, you can see how that might actually hinder the ability for the key stakeholders to be present and get their hands on the patients. So another big part of that is communication, and we found that communication should be focused on more than just having a reliable means of communication. There needs to be a common operating language, so departments that do not often collaborate can maintain situational awareness and effectively support one another. We use a lot of abbreviations and a lot of mnemonics in medicine, and obviously those can differ even between specialties. So really having that common operating language is something that came from the pre-hospital realm, but really has a huge effect on our communication in the hospital. Patient identification and flow. So patients in need of OR resources needed to be quickly recognized, and a bare minimum set of data needed to be obtained for registration and tracking. There also needed to be an established minimum amount of information for the OR to start the patient's case. So things like vital signs, labs, any imaging that might affect how the surgeons proceed with the operation. Kind of determining those basic data points is really crucial for flow into the OR, as well as efficiency and effectiveness of operations. From a supply maintenance standpoint, really the big thing that was emphasized was maintaining a backup supply of necessary surgical equipment, particularly trays and pediatric specific equipment such as chest tubes, catheters, ET tubes, you name it. Finally, drills and exercise was something that was mentioned a lot. Hosting regular drills that include pediatric patients enough to stress the system is a key. The ACS, the American College of Surgeons, requires at least 2 drills or disaster plan activations per year. Another key that many of the focus group mentioned was holding exercises during off hours, such as overnights and weekends. We tend to, do these difficult exercises, but obviously from 9 to 5 when it's most easy to get volunteers and get staff in. So really our weekend and night colleagues don't get as much exercising as we would like, especially that, it's a good chance that a mass casualty incident could happen at night or on the weekend as much as it could during regular business hours. Next slide, please. So based on our findings, development, implementation, and maintenance of a mass casualty response plan for trauma programs is a very necessary but obviously daunting process. So with the data we collected, we were able to create a framework we lovingly call the Surgical and Perioperative Unit Disaster Framework, or SPUD framework. This is designed to streamline the process of creating a plan. It's a completely modifiable framework for a surgical unit mass casualty response plan that can be made specific for any hospital or program, and the resource is free through the Region 5 for Kids website. We really harped on the ability to modify the plan because it allows for individual departments to play to their strengths and mitigate their weaknesses. Situational awareness and stakeholder input can also help identify these attributes. And like I've hopefully shown today, the work doesn't stop once the plan is created. There needs to be an ongoing process of improvement, effort, including regularly revisiting the plan to update based on hospital or departmental changes, regular exercises, and then communication with your Department of Emergency Management to ensure that the unit plan is integrated with the overall hospital plan. And then most importantly, utilization of the plan with exercises and real world events, and then subsequent after action reports can further strengthen the plan. So to give you what I'm going to do next as we move on to the next slide is we'll show you a video of kind of how the SPUD is used, and then we'll talk a little bit, we'll do a little deeper dive into exactly and some of the components that you guys can consider. So Julie, if you're able to play the video, I'll stop talking for a second.
This framework provides a foundation and a structure to help you create a customized surgical disaster framework for your institution. It is also designed to assist staff in achieving success during a disaster. Important to note to save a copy to the location and open it with an Adobe Reader. You can modify most fields in the framework to fit and be customized to your specific procedures and policies. The disaster framework features tabs that facilitate quick navigation to key sections and areas within the document. At the bottom of each page, you can either select Next or Previous Page for easy accessibility. This framework allows for customized flowcharts and job action sheets. Make sure to communicate to staff and to post in key areas of your unit. Ensure the job action sheets are easily accessible and distributed to all staff during emergency. Within this document, you can replace any image with a suitable image that represents your institution by double-clicking on it. This is a short introduction into the Surgical and Perioperative Unit Disaster Framework, also known as the SPUD framework. If you have any further questions, please reach out to the Region 5 for Kids.
Wonderful. So yeah, so as Shelley put in the chat, on the next slide, you can see we published our findings in the Journal of Pediatric Surgery, and our next goal is to work with trauma centers to continue improving our framework. So moving on to the next slide, what I'm going to do is this is just a really broad overview of some of the key features in the SPUD that I want to touch on. We'll move through them fairly quickly, but obviously I think the best way to really explore these is to open up is to download the SPUD and just kind of go through it yourself. We really spent a lot of time, and I can say Shelley more than anyone else put a lot of effort into making this as easily accessible and modifiable as possible. So it really is designed to be self-explanatory, but that won't stop me from bragging about how cool it is. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about some of the key aspects that I found were really, really helpful, and hopefully you'll find that too. So on the next slide, the first thing we talk about, and the first part of the framework, is how to even declare a mass casualty incident. And so we really found that dividing it into sort of 3 separate scales is the most effective way of determining how many resources you need to mobilize. And this mirrors pre-hospital practices. It's nice because it can help delineate when an MCI will require a change in operations, not just for the ED, but then other critical departments such as the OR, ICU, and then when you need to mobilize the entire hospital or healthcare system. You'll notice on these numbers, the default is to use the number of critically injured patients as an indicator of when to activate or scale up an MCI. The trouble is that these numbers are always going to be difficult to predict. Also, there are several variables that can quickly require changes in scale and operations. For example, things like multiple massive transfusions, high number of low acuity patients, high profile events, hazmat, or even mass casualty incidents that may affect the hospital internally. So, once again, this is modifiable because numbers might not be the best, means of determining scale for your hospital. This is just a starting point to have a conversation with your institution, your emergency department, surgery leaders, as well as ancillary services. You find out where your weaknesses lie and then base your activation criteria off of that. Next slide, please. The next slide is an example of a flowchart you can use to activate a mass casualty incident response. Obviously, starting with the staff huddle, creating that shared mental model. A key here is that we included from personal experience at our hospital is the key branch point of the number of inbound or currently unstaffed critically ill or injured patients is expected to overwhelm current OR resources. And that, once again, is a starting point for us, but obviously based on your institution's strengths and weaknesses, that can be adjusted. Next slide, please. We wanted to have a one-pager that really goes over, staff responsibilities, especially because responsibilities are inevitably going to change when a mass casualty incident is declared. So to reduce cognitive load, we included an OR staff list and responsibilities page so personnel could not only know who was crucial to the response, but also what their particular roles include. Next slide, please. Expanding the supplies is difficult, but again, an ounce of preparation is worth a pound of cure. So the framework highlights the need for quick deploy supply bags for resuscitation and rapid OR preparation. We also highlight the DASH tool, which is an amazing tool from our friends at Asper Tracy that can help estimate amounts of critical supplies needed based on the number of expected patients. And there's a link to that within the framework itself. Next slide. A big part of it and a big thing that we all fret about in mass casualty incident response is triage and patient tracking. And so obviously pre-hospital triage has many different models. There's Jumpstart, SALT, you name it. But to date, there is not a simple tool that really can be utilized inside of a hospital. And that's due to the wide variability of hospital capability. So instead, the classic dogma is that the most experienced physician in the ED runs triage. And this creates difficulty in a couple of ways. Is it a misallocation of resources to put the most experienced clinician out of resuscitation in order to put them in triage? Can someone else effectively do it, such as an experienced nurse or other provider? And really, there's no data out there yet. I think it's a wonderful place where we can start to focus some studies. The second issue is that putting the provider in triage kind of traps them in an area where they're not, where they're only focused on the patient when they first arrive. As we know, the patient's condition evolves and often requires close monitoring as they can deteriorate if not resuscitated quickly. So once again, it's that sort of separation of the provider from what happens once the patient gets past them. Third, the hospital's capability and capacity changes as patients go to the OR or more help arrives. And being placed in triage really limits that leader's ability to know of the changes in the hospital's capacity and capability. Fourth, the ED physician knows who needs immediate resuscitation and has insight on what they may require if they require surgical intervention, but that evaluation by a surgeon is kind of that definitive process. So it's like, is it, once again, they're going to have to be constantly re-triaged. And so is there a more effective or, efficient way to do that so we're not doing the same steps over and over again? And then finally, the fifth problem is that triage is incredibly mentally and emotionally draining. So the triage leader may need to be replaced to give them, a break as decision fatigue can quickly set in, and especially when it involves making, life and death decisions with limited knowledge and situational awareness. And so all that is to say that creating a model, including rotating the triage officer or finding a way that the triage officer can have more situational awareness as the MCI unfolds, it can be incorporated into your framework, once again, based entirely on your perception of your hospital's capacity and capability. Next slide, please. Additionally, like I mentioned, tracking is key not only for patient movement through the hospital, but also reunification later in the patient's course. And so that begins in triage and requires a plan on how to catalog and monitor patients. That's also mentioned in the framework. Next slide. Building on that triage concept, we had to consider OR triage after hospital triage. You know, obviously, if a bunch of patients need to go to the OR, who needs to go first? To aid in determining who gets surgical intervention, you know, we were able to get this OR ready / OR wait tool from our colleagues at Riley Children's that really kind of makes it clear and simple to make that decision. And that's also incorporated into the framework. Next slide. We put in, as Shelley mentioned in the video, blueprints on how to reorganize the ED as well as the OR to help optimize space. One of the interesting inputs we got from outside of the focus groups was Dr. Dave McIntyre from Sunrise Hospital in Las Vegas told us about how they organize the ED by site of injury, which can help by concentrating patients by like the type of injury. So in response to the Las Vegas shooting, they actually created a neurosurgery corridor in their ED where any patient with head trauma could be placed, monitored, and grouped. So when neurosurgery got there, they weren't running all over the department looking for their patients. All of their patients were in one place where they could get, you know, care and monitoring until definitive care. Next slide. We also touched briefly on evacuation in the framework. So, you know, having asset evacuation plan helps not only in the case where the hospital may have to evacuate, but also how best to move patients out of a busy ED or unit so as not to impede patient arrival or transport. Next slide. As mentioned in the video, job action sheets are a key not only to dividing labor, but also making staff aware of the changes in responsibility that comes with their new role in a mass casualty incident. And so the sheet really focuses on the before, during, and after responsibilities while keeping details short and easy to digest so that the job action sheet can be quickly picked up and staff can read it and understand their roles in like less than a minute. That's hopefully the goal. And then obviously there are blank spaces where you can fill in, you know, what location that staff is going to be expected to you know, be their base, who they report to, and then obviously you can add in additional duties or remove as needed. Next slide, please. We identified key departments that are crucial to the capability of the hospital. Clinical departments such as pharmacy, lab, radiology are crucial to determining key information that dictates care as well as limitations due to shortages, staffing, and departmental assets. These sheets include actions and communication factors that, you know, can be determined ahead of time. So it's not something that sets us back in the immediate response. Next slide. Like we mentioned in the initial qualitative data, another aspect of lab is determining the minimum laboratory data that must be prioritized for a patient to go to the OR. And this can also aid surgical triage to determine who needs to go immediately to the OR versus who can wait. Who are the patients that are rapidly exsanguinating versus, you know, who are the patients that, you know, bleeding has been controlled. They still need an OR, but not right this second. Next slide. Lastly, the framework lays out the beginning stages of recovery, so key aspects such as debriefing, relief staffing, after-action report, and plan maintenance. Next slide. Staff support is a key element that many of the trauma centers listed. Initial concepts such as obviously feeding the staff, providing a space for them to rest and recover, it must be considered as part of the response and recovery. So more long-term concepts such as mental health support to build resiliency and longevity of the hospital and departments is also included. And in the like I said, attention to time, that is all the big concepts that I wanted to touch on. So I wanted to thank you guys for your time. Obviously, Shelley and I will be available to answer any questions, and I'm really looking forward to discussing this further. But I will give you the presentation back, Julie. Yeah, that is all I have.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Shelley, for actually producing this really amazing tool. And we wanted to kind of kick off this part with a poll question. And then we're going to go into questions for Colin and Shelley, as well as kind of mix that with a bigger group discussion on, what have people done that has done well in your system for involving peri-op, and what has maybe challenges that people have had that we can troubleshoot together. So the poll question is, in a traumatic event, estimate how many red children your peri-op can accommodate in the first hour when your hospital is at maximum capability. So assuming that all of those variables are optimal, how many at baseline for a traumatic event, what would your hospital be able to accommodate? And that kind of just speaks to your hospital and its partially its size. And we're having lots of people, again, in the middle, 28% at 1 to 3, and then 60% 4 to 10. And then there's actually a good 11%. I'll give it 5 more seconds and I'll end the poll. So get your numbers in if you haven't already. Let me share the results so everyone can see them. So as you can see that the vast majority kind of people sit in the 4 to 10, but there is a good number that can receive more than 10 to larger systems, but also a quarter of the systems here that only get a small number. Okay. Oh, is it not showing? Let me do that again. Is it showing now? Yes, no.
I'm
It popped
seeing
up.
it.
I was gonna say it popped up for me.
Okay. Okay. Good. And we'll go to questions for Colin Shelley. I wanted to just kind of point out there's some comments in the chat as well. Anna, if you are available, would you mind? Because I think that's a really good point, that in reason why a lot of us, the systems, go into almost like a paralysis when they think about getting disaster ready in peri-op areas. Do you want to expand on your comment?
Oh yeah, no, this was just in terms of thresholds. I think it's really hard. It depends on what internal resources you have, and the ability for the ED to take something in is going to be different than a perioperative or radiology suite versus like a critical care. So like those thresholds are going to be different for each area. And so I think you would take the minimum, but again, that's going to vary from day to day, time of day. And so it's really challenging to actually say this is the number, right? So.
Yeah, and that actually, to your point, really helped us when we first started that communication, even locally for Nationwide Children's. I remember the sort of impetus for this discussion was when we met with I met with our former Office of Emergency Management. We were working on an HBA, and we talked about the number of patients that would really cause a mass casualty incident. And in the emergency department, I was like, oh, my estimation would be about 4 to 5 would really cause us to change our operations in the emergency department. And then when we put that HBA out, one of our chief of trauma reached out to me immediately and was like, if we got 4 to 5 trauma patients that needed an operation, we would be sunk. Like our number is much lower. Like he was saying even 2 to 3, on a relatively not busy day in the OR could be really disruptive to them. And so that really made me consider, like, these are, obviously I can create a plan for the ED, but I really can't create a plan that makes sense unless I incorporate the other departments that are immediately going to be affected. And so OR, ICU. So, and to your point, like, there are days where our ICU is, full and we have boarders in the ED, and that's going to drastically change how we respond as well. So I think those are all really that's a key point that, once again, you can account for as much as possible in the framework, but at the same time, you have to have contingencies in case you're in those situations where your system is already overwhelmed, and then on top of it comes a mass casualty incident.
I think so. From a nursing point of view, it gives staff validation of when they need to alert the system. It might not be, it gives them the ability to have that power to alert their superiors, hey, we're getting this many people, and it gives them, what resources do I need to activate? What resources do I not? If you don't put a number there, everybody's always looking at each other and don't even know when to start having the conversations. So I think it is kind of important that you have to work with your facilities and kind of have a flexible number, just so it gives your staff power to be able to make those choices and to be able to ask for resources.
Thank you. That's really good points there. Does anyone in the kind of our participant group have any wins that they've had with their peri-op areas, or difficulty in just even getting them to participate, or obstacles that you wanted to bring up here? Also, there's a great question by Marie in the chat. Colin, you were talking about, I think, the triaging of patients when they came in, and finding the kind of the right person or team, if you have availability, to be out there. Maria, are you able to come off of mute?
Are you talking about my comment about different disciplines?
Yes, yes.
Yes, and I just wanted to congratulate Colin, Shelley, and the whole team. Mike Dingledine, who created this resource. This really is. My hospital will be hosting your team for a focus group pretty soon. But if you, this is a conversation starter. If you just have the conversation, the people will be thrilled to be engaged. What about your PACU group? What about your PICU group? Just starting your radiology group, who often don't get asked what the capabilities they have. And this is a template for that conversation starter that will it so very much lend itself to them wanting to be prepared. So this is like how to give a party. You know, this is a playbook for how to start this party. And it's really great that it comes at the same time within the last 2 years of the re-verification process requiring MCI training. So we've changed the re-verification for level 1 pediatric trauma centers. So there's that motivation there, but then they're given a playbook on how to achieve that re-verification. So this is all like a virtuous cycle. So start the conversation with these multidisciplinary groups. Make an ally of your trauma coordinator and your lead trauma surgeon and your lead radiology person. Your person in the PICU would be charged with planning this. Then those allies will be really all on the same page. It's a fantastic conversation starter. And just even the simple questions of who should be the triage teams, let's review our job action sheets. It's one of the most mundane tasks. No one wants to do it. It's tedious, but if you do it as a team and agree upon it and have a subject matter expert validate it, they will be worth their weight in gold should, God forbid, an actual incident occur, because chaos creates morbidity. So thank you guys for just creating this.
And
Yeah, thank you. And you hit the nail on the head. It really is. The framework is designed. You can use it right out of the box, but it's really more so designed to be that conversation starter between departments, and really to get everybody on the same page and even in the same room to really figure out those crucial details that you need to mount a successful response. So thank you again for touching on that.
And then we're doing this as almost a bigger breakout. So if anyone else has also thoughts on questions or even stories from their own drills or planning that you want to bring forward, we'd love to hear it.
I was just going to say, Colin, I think you bring up a really amazing point in that it's, we can do so much in the ED, speaking as like an emergency physician, but it's that transition into the hospital. And so it's really testing that transition to other areas. And I know Erica's going to speak about this also, that I'm not sure. I think uh, we at Boston Children's probably could do a better job at. Everybody has their own plans, but have we really tested really that flow of plans and that expectation of information and expectations? Do all our expectations align? Those are very important questions.
Okay. I think I counted to 10, maybe quickly. Should we do the next poll questions?
You have a question in the chat about the American Society of Anesthesiologists. I don't know if Gabrielle wants to come off mute and talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Yes, good afternoon. I know I was trying to develop a plan. I really like this plan. I'm gonna use it instead of my own. But I know we were incorporating the checklist from the American Association of Anesthesiologists. Did you guys reference that by any chance?
Yeah, we did not, but that is an awesome resource. I just pulled it up, and so I'm going to look through this, and we are going to see if we can incorporate this into phase two. Like I mentioned, as soon as we put this out, we immediately started on our second phase of improvement for it. So, like Marie mentioned, we'll be doing focus group interviews with the original. Pediatric level one trauma centers in our region to see how how they've used the plan, any feedback they have, and then obviously we've been utilizing opportunities like this to present the plan to get feedback on how we can improve it. And so thank you so much for bringing that up. I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can incorporate this into the plan to make it even more inclusive to the perioperative space, including our anesthesiologists, who I will say have a fantastic amount of mass casualty incident response literature that we definitely utilized in this in formulating the SPUD, but I don't know if we use this particular or if I even knew about this particular checklist. So thank you again.
Okay, so we move on to our next topic on the radiology department and an MCI. Poll question is, does your hospital have a medical imaging mass casualty plan? Yes, no, or unsure? Okay. We still have a lot of answers coming in. We've about give it 2 more seconds and I'll end the poll. So get your response in. Okay. And the results are 24% yes, 35% no, and 41% unsure. So really excited to have this topic. You can see that a lot of us aren't clear what they do. Maybe they are doing something, maybe it's integrated, maybe it's not. And would love to hear from the people who do have a plan after Erica speaks on what their plan is. Okay, next question. In an MCI, does your ED plan for ordering imaging electronically or by downtime paper orders? And just choose one, and it's by EHR or electronic, by downtime, or not sure. If you're either or, depending, you can also choose not sure. Okay. We'll end our poll, 2 seconds. Okay. We have about 40% EHR, about 30% downtime, and 33% not sure. So let me share that, sorry. So quite a variety of the ways that people are doing things right now. And I think Erica's going to speak to both of those. So excited to hear that. Next slide. Okay. Happy to, not sure if you guys were seeing or not seeing the results. It says that it's sharing, but I'm happy to introduce Erica Popovsky, who is a pediatric emergency physician at Lurie Children's and is going to talk to us about incorporating medical imaging into our disaster MCI plans.
All right.
Erica?
Awesome. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to present. I do apologize that I have laryngitis, so I'm not really able to speak at my usual volume. If any of you are available to come off and like put your cameras on, please feel free to do so. I love not talking to black boxes. And I just wanted to thank Colin and Shelley did such an amazing job with the SPUD framework. And I feel like they set this up really well, giving us that like macro-based lens for the MCI framework. And I'm really going to talk more on the micro level and talking about a project we've been working on over the last several years at Lurie, focusing on MCI response for medical imaging. Next slide, please. And I think it was Sarita or Marie who talked about the importance of bringing other people outside of the emergency department to the table. And that was really the ultimate goal of this. So I want to highlight the importance of using high fidelity simulations for technology intensive processes like medical imaging, where the software is going to be very key to identify vulnerabilities and opportunities for improvement. And then I also hope this serves to highlight some tangible MCI medical imaging improvement strategies that you could translate to your hospital as well. Next slide, please. And so given that this is the surge work group, this is not new information to anyone, but that a surge event is going to be divided into the 4 S's, space, staff, supplies, and systems. And so it's really helpful as you're framing your simulation to think about what S you really want to focus on and what you want to test down into. And so during an MCI, there's going to be that rapid influx, likely trauma victims. There's always the fire, carbon monoxide, et cetera, but mostly more likely to be trauma. And most of them will require medical imaging studies. And medical imaging studies can be a significant rate limiting step for throughput through the emergency department, but also for determination of whether or not a patient may be going to the operating room, admitted to the floor, or the intensive care unit, depending on their clinical stability. And so we know, at least at Lurie, that we already have existing challenges in getting studies and interpretation during off hours at a rapid speed. And so our goal through this project was to increase throughput of patients through medical imaging modalities, improve medical imaging staff response to an MCI notification, and then focus on how to decrease time to interpretation of radiology scans with streamlining notification of the primary teams. Next slide, please. And so about a third of you, I think, said that you either that you were unsure if you had a medical imaging plan for mass casualty, and then another large percentage said that you did not. And so our initial state was that we had about a paragraph in our mass casualty policy that said if the MCI plan was activated, the medical imaging department would send down several resources. It would consist of an X-ray and ultrasound technologist paired with one of their portable machines. Then a CT tech would go to the EDC CT scanner. And then to help them, the MR tech would also come to the EDCT scanner. There was a role called a charge attending radiologist, which was pretty nebulous, but it said that they will interpret medical imaging exams from the reading room. I recognize that MI has many connotations in emergency medicine. In this case, it is medical imaging. And then usually at baseline, our techs participated in our annual mass casualty drills, which were hospital-wide, but we had not actually practiced imaging reads or our communication. Next slide, please. And so for these simulations, we viewed these really as quality improvement processes. And so we thought about each simulation essentially as a PDSA cycle. And we really wanted to start small with our key stakeholders involved in medical imaging and then expand out to include additional staff within the emergency department. But I really want to highlight here that the most critical element to success was that our manager of our medical imaging technologist was truly our MVP through all of this. She really drove the radiology work forward. She served as the champion of this work. And without her, honestly, I don't think we would have been able to get any of this done. And so I encourage for any of the processes that we're discussing within Surge and MCI is finding your champion outside of the emergency department because they will be so crucial to that teamwork. Next slide, please. And our timeline, this is deliberately not linear. This has spanned 4 years. We've had 9 simulations that have ranged from initially tabletop to full-scale hospital-wide exercises, and then many, many meetings in between. And then you can see there's this dashed line between 2023 and 2024. We had some staff changeover, we had lost some momentum. And then click, please. But luckily, oh wow, that is a very slow appearance, sorry. Click one more time. It's supposed to do something. Nope, it did not. Okay, we can go back, sorry. There's supposed to be a lightning strike there, but and so our extended downtime happened between these dashed lines and was very helpful because it really forced us to critically evaluate how we can manage surge without our typical workflow. I'm not recommending that you all have a 35-day period of downtime, but it was very helpful for this project. Next slide, please. Just to get a sense of how we frame these simulations, and the details on these grids are not important, but this is just an example of our drill sheets. Usually we would have about 10 drill patients. We would give them names, we would give them medical record numbers, and then we would have just some basic injuries and what the imaging was that they needed and what findings we expected. And this way we could move each of these patients through a series of imaging studies to examine the process of things like order entry and then actually identify bottlenecks of moving the patients as we went through. Next slide, please. And these simulations were just escalating fidelity and complexity. So we would add at least one process during each sim. So you can see here that there's like a big thing that says annotate in each of the boxes. And so one thing that we tried to do was incorporate a point of care annotation system so that the X-ray or ultrasound technologists could add the bedside team's interpretation in order for the radiologist to see that we had already seen the critical findings in the emergency department and not have to call and use that time to convey a critical finding that we were already aware of. Next slide. And then as we went through, we actually imaged the mannequins, meaning that we shot dummy films or we put them through the CT scanner. And then we partnered with our IT folks to have images uploaded into the medical imaging system. And then as we added that system to annotate our reads, we wanted to make sure that the radiologists could see what we already knew and that they could actually interpret real images and try to convey critical results to us. And so having these additive sims was really helpful because we could incorporate the last drill's improvement strategies and see, is this working? And sometimes the answer was no, it absolutely wasn't. And sometimes it was. And so we'll go through some of those processes later. Next slide, please. And then as our simulations became more complex, We also increased the complexity for our observers, getting more granular detail about that mirrored the job action sheets. Were they following the job action sheets? Was the notification system in process? How was this going? And we got more and more people involved as we increased the fidelity of SIMS. Next slide, please. And so I think that the biggest lesson that I learned from this process and can be applied to any surge simulation strategy is that you need to test each step of the process. Because without understanding the really fundamental process map, it's going to be much harder to understand downstream effects of your interventions. And so you can see on the left that here we have our radiology tech inputting patient information into the ultrasound machine. Then on the right, we're testing the process of moving an intubated mannequin into the CT scanner with multiple staff. So we really got into that nitty gritty. Next slide, please. So getting into the truly understanding the medical imaging workflow, you need to understand your system. This was sort of my broad interpretation for those of you who understand the South Park underwear gnome reference. I hope you enjoy. But my basic understanding was we put an order in Epic, stuff happened. I called a bunch of times and said, where's my read? And then my read appeared, and that was great. And so that is not at all what happens. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to use the CT workflow as an example here. And so, you place the order in Epic, stuff happens, the patient gets a CT, more stuff happens, the read is published in Epic. Next slide. And then I'm just using my radiology colleagues. They are wonderful, but then you have to go and perform your required clinical correlation. Next slide. But through our SIMS, we were able to map this process out into much more detail and realize all of these behind the scenes aspects. And so, it looks like my arrows below turned into boxes. And so I apologize for that. But this may not be universal. There are lots of different EHRs in place. But there are some broad principles here that are important, which is that depending on what your EHR is, the medical imaging software is separate. So they have to communicate with each other. And so then there has to be an ability to notify technologists that the patient is ready to be imaged. Then if you need to bring that patient to CT, a staff member has to either come get that patient or the nurse has to be aware that CT is ready to bring them over there. And then the technologist who is actually protocolizing the CT needs to be able to see the orders as well as the patient location and everything like that. Next slide, please. And so from there, once the patient's CT is performed, the images will be uploaded into the radiologist queue. And I think that this is a really important point that I learned, is that first of all, we know radiologists have different specialties. And so you have your neuroradiologists, you have your body radiologists. They all have things that they are comfortable reading. And that is reflected within their own day-to-day workflow. And so depending on the study type, the images are automatically routed into the appropriate radiologist's work list. So for example, if you order a CT head, that only goes to the neuroradiologist. The body radiologist does not see that scan at all. And then once the radiologists have interpreted these studies, they dictate reads, which are then transmitted into Epic. If there's a critical read, then there's the requirement for a verbal notification of the provider. So this is just day-to-day state. This is one patient, one scan, right? So next slide. That also means that for your EHR to function properly, and for this whole system to work, you need a lot of moving parts. That means that your patient has to be registered in your electronic healthcare record, Epic or whatever it is. Your real-time track board has to be functioning so that they can see where the patient is. They can see who's taking care of the patient if they have to call back a critical read. They need their software to be working so they can see their own images. And then they need phones that we need to be logged into our phones in the emergency department, and they need their phones to be working to call that read. So this is everything that needs to happen for this to work well. Next slide, please. Okay, so if we are then thinking about a rapid influx of patients, and this is what has happened in incidents like Las Vegas, the Harvest Festival shooting, is that your systems may be functional, but you can still have your systems overwhelmed. And if registration cannot keep up with the registration process of patients, you are going to convert over to your disaster pre-made downtime charts. And so your systems could all work. You still have internet, you still have phones. That's great. But what does that mean for this process if you move to paper charting? This means that one, patients are not visible on the track board. Two is that if they're not registered in the electronic health record, then you have to put in some sort of downtime order, whether that's a verbal order or a paper order. Radiology has lost their ability to see their work list and the order of paper entry or of the order entry. And so they don't know where patients are located. They don't know who's taking care of them. They do not know the order that these need to happen. Then when we think about the other side of things, that, okay, the patient gets the CT, the CT scans go into this kind of purgatory where they are unassigned. They do not go to the appropriate radiologist, and this will significantly impede the workflow of radiology. They will have to manually check what each scan is and move it to the appropriate radiologist. So as we're thinking about what that means in terms of our surge principles, that means you're going to have to massively increase your staffing so you have more people reading, but you also have people moving your images to the right place, right? Then it also means that they're not going to know who to call. So how are you going to manage that discrepancy between what they're seeing and what you're seeing, and manage those calls there? And so next slide, please. You also have to think about how the physical reads are going to get to the appropriate person. If they are, if it's still working, they may be able to print their reads, but you still have to get it to the patient care team, and that patient may have been dispositioned. And then depending on your MCI communication plan, you may not be logged into your standard phones. Are you going to be using your vote phones? Are you going to be using walkie-talkies? What are you going to be doing there? And this all has to be incorporated as we go through. Next slide, please. So I'm going to just go through some of the challenges that we found and then some solutions that we put in. We don't need to go through all of these. This is more so that when the slides are distributed, you can see a little bit more in detail. But a really big theme we found when we're thinking about our S's is going to be staff and systems. And so staff comfort and familiarity, like we talked about, is they really had not been very involved in MCI preparedness before this, and they hadn't been involved in our drills. And so we refined all of the job action sheets for the technologist roles as well as for radiologists. There were dedicated education sessions led by our amazing technologist manager. And then as we repeated our drills, there was definitely increased comfort. Another thing is that if it is not part of their day-to-day workflow, and if you're asking staff to operate outside of their typical sphere of comfort, then we have to make sure that we have trained people on how to do that. And so in one of our first drills, our MR techs, we found they're coming to the CT scanner, they don't know how to use the CT. And so they needed education and refreshers on that. And then another thing was just recognizing who's who in a large mass casualty incident when our teams change all the time. And so next slide, please. One of the things we did with that, this is just a very easy fix for us. Sorry, next slide. There we go, is that we have role identification stickers. We ask everyone when they report to any of our traumas now or our codes to use these, so it becomes part of our day-to-day process. We added them for our radiology technologists, and we have them put them on their hats because we know people are constantly changing PPE. Next slide, please. And then when we're thinking about just when our systems are working properly and we're thinking about our EHR order process, a big bottleneck we discovered was that during an MCI, computers may not be widely available. And you also may have people reporting to the emergency department who are not as familiar with the ED workflow and the ED orders. And so we wanted to streamline the order process. Next slide, please. And the way that we did that um, was by creating an ED mass casualty order set. And so this is an order set that can be found just within, for us, it's Epic. It has all of our trauma labs that are pre-checked. It has our massive transfusion protocol embedded. But then for radiology, with partnering with our surgical team, as well as our radiology team and our emergency department team, we created a CT mass casualty. This is not supposed to be used day to day. It wouldn't need to be used if there are 4 patients. But if there is truly 30, 40, 50, whatever number of patients that you need rapid CTs on, rather than having lots of different orders, lots of different protocols, this is a head through pelvis with contrast that streamlined the approach. Next slide, please. And so what the CT mass casualty did for us was that many of you may have experienced that ordering CTs comes with a lot of hard stops. You have diagnosis association, there may be clinical decision support tools. And so our IT partner was able to bypass a lot of these by creating a linked protocol of CT head, CT neck, and CTA neck, CT, CTA chest and abdomen, and pelvis that automatically is linked to a diagnosis of polytrauma. And then on the medical imaging side, they created a pre-made interpretation sheet so that instead of having to dictate and have all the incidentalomas noted, it is a yes, no. Intracranial hemorrhage, yes, no. Midline shift, yes, no. Is there like a large vessel disruption? Yes, no. So that they can easily click through that, print it out, or send it via Epic if our systems are working, which in this case they would be for this order to work. Next slide, please. And then lastly, just talking about our downtime processes. This is something that I think really needs to be accounted for in MCI and surge planning in general, because if you are working off paper, things are going to slow down. And if you don't know how to do it ahead of time, things are really going to slow down. And so some of the downtime processes that we really thought about were, how do techs manually input the orders into the system? How does the ED communicate to radiology what their prelim interpretation was to avoid unnecessary calls back? Then if radiology sees that interpretation, how do they tell us what a discrepant result was? Like, hey, you thought this was a pneumothorax, it's not. And then how are radiologists going to communicate to the emergency department a critical result if they can't see the track board? And then how will we receive the final reads? And next slide. And so some of the things that we found was, one very basic thing early on was that it was difficult for the technologists to actually input patient identification information and orders into the machine because they did not have keyboards attached to the x-ray machines. And so we got keyboards added to all the portable machines. This is now used every day. It's a really helpful thing that it's improved all of our processes. Our technologists were also less familiar with downtime and manual orders, and that process is slower. Our prolonged downtime fixed that for practice. Again, that may be a less implementable strategy for you guys. And then another thing was that communication. And so the ED provider not being visible on the track board meant that they basically were either all calling the MD lead or calling our service reps with the reads. And that is just taking them away from other tasks they need to be a part of. And so we created a centralized role for our lead advanced practice practitioner and added that to their job action sheet, that they serve as the repository essentially when they get calls for critical reads, so that radiology only has to know one number to call if the track boards are not functional. And then along those lines is that we also created a sticky note system that first we said we're going to put a little sticky note on, like a virtual sticky note on the technologist machines with the basic interpretation from the ED. That didn't work. It wasn't visible in our medical imaging system. So then we said, okay, what is something that they already do? And we knew our ultrasonographers already put in like manual, like right upper quadrant, left upper quadrant, etc. So they have the ability to type into the system, and that is visible by our medical imaging software. And so we just mirrored that and made a bunch of pre-populated reads that could be added with a click of a button. And so our X-ray technologists can just click a button and it will pop in right pneumothorax or left pneumothorax, and they can see what the ED read it as. And so that has been helpful as well. Next slide, please. And so I think like our really broad lessons learned is that this work didn't move forward without a champion. You need to involve someone who's dedicated outside of emergency management, who both sees the importance, but also will really help partner with you. Understanding the details of the system was so critical. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, just get more radiologists. This should be easy. And that's not how it works. And then also, if the solution seems too hard, there might be an easier way to do it. And that was, we were coming into so many roadblocks with our order set with the CT. And it turned out to be a 1-minute fix by one of our IT gurus. And so finding the person who can help you may save you a lot of work. And then change is incremental. We have gone very far with like 2 steps forward, 5 steps back, but the downtime crisis really helped us out. Last slide. Please feel free to email me about any questions you have. This is our beautiful CT scanner.
Thank you, Erica. It is a beautiful CT scanner, but we're also very grateful for all this hard work that you've done over this past few years. So thank you so much, because just going and diving into the details, I think, makes all the difference, especially when we're interacting with departments that we're not as familiar with. Love to take a question or two. I know we're kind of just at time, but if you also, we have Erica's email there. Feel free to email her as well. Erica, just one quick question that just checking the chat, see if there's anybody else. How hard was it to get those pre-populated interpretations, radiographic interpretations into the system for the text to click on?
Not hard. Our technology manager was able to do that. They already have the ability now anyway, where they can like have pre-populated stuff. So if you give them a list of things, so we just put in basically pneumothorax, fracture, contusion as like basic things.
Okay. Nice. Julie's also put some information into the chat for your CE credit for today, and some fireside chats that are coming up in November. Some other jewel kit orientations on the 22nd of this month. And Julie, feel free. I don't want to take away your fire here.
I see what you did there. So as I get to the slide, on October the 15th, which I believe is next Wednesday. Maybe.
Yes.
So October 15th, which is next Wednesday, we are having a fireside chat about children and youth with special healthcare needs and children with medical complexity. And it is a 2-part series. The first one is next week, and this is going to be why we need to know about these children and why we need to incorporate those into our disaster plans. And then the following month, November 19th, we'll hear the part 2 about actually incorporating them and tips on incorporating them. So put the link to that registration for those sessions. It's one registration. You can look at that. Before, and then after next week, the week after next, we have, like I said, we have drill toolkits for you all. We have them in all 4 focus areas. This includes downloadable packets, patient case cards, family member cards. It will incorporate the DRC process measures that we're asking you to incorporate into your drills. And so we are having an orientation session, and we'll be disseminating those materials on and after October 22nd. So the QR code for that orientation session is here, and I also put that in the chat. Yes, Marie, Dawn is amazing. I'm super excited to hear from her. And then back to our mental health piece of the disaster planning on the 18th of November, so the day before that part 2 of the other series. On November 18th, we will hear from Dr. Kodesh and Dr. Sadinajad on the management of pediatric PTSD and comorbid symptoms within the framework of disaster response. All of 3 of these fireside chats are going to be absolutely amazing. So we hope that you can join us for those, as well as the drill material orientation. I'll put this in the chat, but feel free to take a picture of this, copy this down. HEMCOS is going to be your code to claim credit for today's session. And then we always love to hear back from you. Hopefully you've seen several of you have put some great comments in our evaluations in the past, and we've taken those to heart. We've tried really hard to get to the breakout sessions. That seems to be one that everybody loves, and we've incorporated that either throughout the session like we did today or at the end. But we are taking all of your feedback, so please fill the evaluation out, and we will make improvements continuously. If you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you
Julie,
all
can
for
you go back to the code?
our speakers. Yes, absolutely.
And please let us know if there's other topics that you would like us to discuss that we haven't discussed so far. We've saved a couple of sessions for preferences that we have not covered. So please comment on that as well.
Thank you so much to Dr. Popovsky, Dr. Cullen, and Shelley. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything.
Thank
And
you.
to him as well.